What's up, everybody? I'm back here in studio at Turning Point USA HQ in Phoenix, Arizona. Had a long trip. Went out to D.C. for the Title IX rally, the Our Bodies, Our Sports rally on the 50th anniversary of Title IX. And I got to chat with Riley Gaines and then have an extended conversation in Vegas where they had Icons, the very, very first conference they had. It's the Independent Council on Women's Sports. A lot of ladies coming together to do whatever they can to save fairness and equality in women's sports. You know, in past episodes, I covered Lia Thomas and Riley Gaines tying in the 200 freestyle out at Georgia Tech University where they had the NCAA Division I swimming championships. And Riley, I was asking her, give me the backstory. What happened? What was it like? What were the other athletes saying? What was it like to be on the podium with a biological man? She breaks that all down and what it means to be a voice for women's sports. Enjoy this episode. All right, Riley, welcome back. I know we chatted out in D.C. and we were covering a lot of what it was like to be at the swimming championships. And once again, too, being out there and seeing both you and Lia Thomas on the 5th place podium at the 200 free, I thought something was wrong.
Yeah.
And then obviously you shared the story of Lia Thomas got the trophy and then the NCAA told you that, oh, we'll mail that to you. So once again, it's males being protected at the expense of females.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like you mentioned, being on that podium, I was actually dead set before my race. I had actually pondered the idea. I'm like, do I race? Do I stand down? Because this is something before I raced, watching the night before, seeing Lia win a national title on a female spot. It just makes you so heartbroken and frustrated. And so I thought, you know, do I stand down? But it's so hard to get everyone on that same page because people are scared. I mean, we've dedicated our whole lives, our whole collegiate season for sure, to get to that meet. And so no one wants to just give that up because, again, that's just females giving something else at the expense of, you know, a man being able to compete. And so I had thought about it, but I thought, no, like I'm going to race, but I won't go on the podium. And that's before I raced, I said that's what I was going to do. And so touching the wall and seeing the 5 by my name and the 5 by Thomas's name, I mean, I had all these thoughts. I was like, maybe I should go on the podium and stand there and people will be able to see the difference between Thomas and I. And so I made the last minute decision to do it. And then everything else that happened behind the awards podium really kind of solidified my feelings and, you know, my passion behind it. But you're right, you can blatantly see not just the height difference, but the longer limbs. I mean,
it's a big dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, 6'1" or 6'2", something like that. It's like over half a foot taller than me, which really matters in a sport like swimming where you're using your wingspan, you're using your agility off the blocks, off your walls and things like that. And if you just watch the race, you can see that first start in every turn. Thomas is clearly doing less underwater kicks, which is something that swimmers really try to utilize to get farther, but Thomas didn't need to because there were other advantages being used.
Did you know that you get thrown into a position like this? Did you ever envision, like, what if I'm on the podium here? Or what if I need to speak up? Or what if ESPN ends up interviewing me? Do I talk? What are your friends or family telling you? Did you run through all those scenarios in your head before the swimming championships?
Kind of. I was pretty certain there would be some media attention behind the whole meet and stuff. And I was pretty certain I would be in the top 8. It's something that I had worked really hard at, and I knew, you know, if Thomas was kind of doing it strategically, she would be in the top 8 as well. And so I figured there would be an opportunity to speak out, but I truly didn't think I would need to because I thought someone else would do it. But my school actually made me go through media training before the meet because they assumed we would be in this situation, not this exact situation, but in a situation where there would be media attention and I would be asked to speak about it. And so I actually went through media training where they told me the correct pronouns to use, and they told me things to say if I was asked these certain questions, and so that didn't sit right with me. I get they were just kind of taking precautions, but I'm not one to necessarily like being told what to say, clearly. And so
did you feel like there was no sense of free speech throughout the season, and then especially when it came to the swimming championships? Because it sounds like they're telling you what to do and how to do it.
Yeah, kind of. I think they were pushing suggestions, and they kept reiterating, this is a suggestion, because I don't think they wanted to make it seem like they were telling you exactly what to say. And so they would reiterate, this is what you could say, but they're definitely trying to plant that seed in your head. But after talking with so many other swimmers at other schools, you know, hearing these stories of what their SIDs and their coaches and athletic departments told them to say, I mean, there were definitely people being told what to say. It's definitely an infringement on freedom of speech. The Ivy League swimmers, they were threatened with their scholarships and athletic opportunities, and, you know, they were intimidated into thinking they wouldn't get into graduate school, they won't get jobs, which is just absolutely mind-blowing, especially from my experience, where I've received 10 times the support and positive comments than I have anything negative. So.
And then I know Kim, one of the founders of Icons here, we're here at the Independent Council of Women's Sports here in Vegas, first ever.
Yeah.
Less than 60 days,
yeah.
They came together. Two people that didn't know each other. Marcy Smith has been on the Breakaway podcast as well. And they said, well, we just got to do something.
Yeah.
And so a difference can get made.
For sure.
But I know that Kim was talking about how some of these Ivy League swimmers, there was an email sent to them. So there's actual, there's evidence of this. It says, here's basically a threat, but it's not really a threat, and it's kind of a suggestion. And why do you think there's so many threats to protect men at the expense of women again? Because it just doesn't seem like people can even wrap our minds around it. It's hard for you, it's hard for me, it's hard for everybody watching and listening. It just doesn't seem to make sense.
Exactly. I think discrimination is something that is feared, for sure, whether that be, you know, race, gender, your age, your abilities, whatever it is. There's this huge fear around discriminating against people, but what everyone is failing to realize is that we're discriminating against females. And I think, you know, people think of transgenders as a historically oppressed group, which is true, but I think people fail to remember that women are a historically oppressed group. And so I just feel like there's this kind of misconception on these things, and people forget the past. It's not really that long ago. I mean, women were fighting for equal opportunities 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Yep.
So it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long ago.
Yeah, we just had the 50th anniversary of Title IX.
Right, and so in the early years of Title IX, they're still fighting. Even, obviously, now we're still fighting. And so I think people are protecting this small minority, probably not even 1%, at the expense of females who, basically make up 50% of the world. And I think it's because that minority is a small group, but a loud group.
And that's where I feel like it starts at the top. You've heard people speak here, and this is not a left or right issue, but there is left or right when it comes to the coverage of this and the support of this. So obviously I'm going to come from more the right side of the aisle. And it's very telling that you have someone like President Biden trying to change Title IX. So gender identity is now going to be a protected group in there. So, so when you see that from the left, it seems like they care for women in certain circumstances, or at least say they do, and then they do something completely different when it comes to sports.
That's the thing, is in regards to this whole abortion thing that's come to light, the same people saying protect women in this sense are the same people who aren't willing and wanting to protect women in the sports aspect. And so there's some hypocrisy. And I think this goes both ways, but it's just a bit mind-blowing, and it shows me that there are definitely sheep out there who kind of just listen and follow what's being said. I think if anyone just looks at this situation, like you mentioned, it's not something that's political. I think, kind of denying that there's not biological and physical advantages to males over females is defying science and logic and reason and common sense. And it's not something that has to be split between left and right, but there are people who just follow just because.
And it seems like it's kind of breaking through for some people. And I know I've said this to multiple people. Like Marshy Smith was on the podcast, Seth Houston was on there. We've had Beth Stelzer from Save Women's Sports. Like, I wasn't a swimmer. I've swam before, but like I don't really understand the competition behind that. I always played football, basketball, baseball. Been involved in the National Hockey League. Been involved with the NBA. So like there's these big sports. But is it going to be until you have a biological male that tries to play women's basketball that is going to really turn the tide? But that also would mean that like we've gone so far that it's almost going to be lost forever. Like when are people really going to start together? Because it's not confusing. It's
exactly.
it's either your XX or XY, and women's sports should be women's sports.
I think you're exactly right. I think it will take something that has more coverage, has more people watching, like basketball, where, I mean, there are, just like in swimming, there are obvious differences, but there will be more people watching. They'll see it. It'll be kind of groundbreaking. And so I think that's when a change will come, a big change, one that can kind of get back Title IX, what it stood for, is once the world kind of sees these things and realizes if this happens, there's no going back.
And before we get into actions, because I think that's what this whole conference is about. I mean, it's amazing being here and finally seeing the difference that's being made. It doesn't really take a long time, once again, to come together and get some people from the medical side of things, athletes like you, coaches, former Olympians. Like there's some incredible athletes here,
there is.
But it comes down to how do you make a difference right now? You see the other side has massive names, massive influencers, celebrities, big politicians on the left that are going to push all this stuff that talks about like, well, you have to be loving, you have to be caring, you don't want to be transphobic, you don't want to be homophobic. They're pushing all these things on you. Do you think it's going to come down to some current athlete or celebrity that stands with you and other women saying, hey, we need to protect women's sports in order to make a difference? Because it doesn't seem like there's any real current athlete or celebrity that is a massive face of this thing yet.
Yeah. I don't know. This one's tricky. I think a lot of people in these positions you're talking about are definitely motivated by money. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's their incentive, and I feel like it will take something that kind of puts that at risk for them to quickly change their kind of saying behind it. But I don't know how you get to that point. It's tricky. I think the more people of the silent majority who kind of use their voice, it will show kind of what the general population is feeling. Because like you mentioned, this is not something that most people agree with or find fair. And I think if people start to voice that, that's when you start flipping those bigger names. These outlets, you'll get more coverage on kind of this side of thing. But I think that will take a lot.
Nate, you said before there's a lot of sheep out there, but you decided to be a wolf among sheep. Like, how do you encourage people to finally speak up? Because, I mean, especially there's a lot of young girls that are even at this conference, that were at the DC rally, that are dealing with this in high school. And then they might be dealing with this before high school. And they're in this social media age where, you know, right now I could have a lot of things to say about social media, that they care about who they are online more than who they are in person, but they're expected to speak out on these things. And it can be almost trendy to support the transgender community. So if you go against that in some way, you're ostracized. Like, how do you encourage people to be wolves among sheep and be really, really bold and courageous in this stance?
Based off my personal experience, I have had so much more support than anything negative. And so if this is any encouragement to anyone wanting to speak out, and it doesn't have to be a female athlete, it can be a male, it can be an older person, a younger person. You don't even have to be an athlete to speak out. You don't have to have some personal experience. It can be a coach. Whoever you are, if you're wanting to speak out, use your voice, do it, because I think there's kind of this misconception that you'll receive a ton of backlash, you won't get a job, you'll lose your job. I have received quite literally the opposite of that, and that's not some exaggeration or lie. Like, there's been so many parents reaching out to me, grandparents saying thank you, like our daughters thank you, people saying, you know, they have sisters in this, and young athletes thanking me, and older people who have fought for Title IX thanking me, and it's just been extremely overwhelming, the positive influx of messages I've received.
And then before we get into actions a little bit more, there was an aspect of the swimming championships that a lot of people didn't cover. I know we've talked about this off camera, but Isaac Hennig, so a biological female that transitioned to be a male, was swimming topless at the meets. And that was something that wasn't covered. And I think it's so telling that you have someone that wants to be a man but is staying in women's sports. It's because they wouldn't find success in men's sports. So that's got to be another thing, that we can beat people down with logic all we want, but there's a reason it seems like that major outlets or celebrities or influencers on the other side that are just going to support Lia Thomas and other transgenders, there's a reason they're not bringing up Isaac Hennig.
For sure. Exactly like you said, it just proves that the women's category has been the catch-all. If we're basing, which is what Title IX, the new Title IX says, if we're basing these categories off gender identity, then you're exactly right. Why is the female who wants to be a he, him, who goes by Isaac, transitioning to male, why is she / he not swimming with the men? And it's a very clear answer, is because they wouldn't be able to. They didn't have the time qualifications to qualify, which really proves that women's sports are jeopardized, not men's sports. And I think having this open category in a sport like swimming, where it's a bit more individual, it gives everyone the opportunity to compete. It gives everyone the opportunity to be successful, because no one wants to deny anyone of athletic opportunities. Everyone should be able to compete, no matter who you are. I mean, sports make people. I mean, that's where I've developed so many of my characteristics, so many friendships, so many memories, and no one should be denied of that. But having that category really ensures fairness and opportunities for every single person without jeopardizing women. Yeah,
because that's when we get into actions here. I know there was something, I wrote this down, what some of the suggestions that people had, specifically with actions, like even the way that we talk about this stuff, the vocabulary.
Yeah.
Like the other side is going to make things so confusing.
Right.
And I think even a conference like this, the way you speak about it, it's not that confusing. Yeah. Like, let me simplify it for you. There's men and there's women. Men have a biological advantage over women. Men are trying to get in women's sports. Women aren't trying to get into men's sports. And then I forget who said this here, but even just replacing the word inclusion with eligibility, I think that kind of language could really help make a difference in this fight.
For sure, because people hear inclusion and automatically think if someone's not being included, they're being discriminated against. But if you're using the word eligibility, you're kind of thinking about what qualifications it takes to compete there. Like, are you eligible? Rather than the word, when you're using inclusion, rather than are you being included? And so definitely I think, changing the language behind these things will help for sure. I think it will get more people on the same page. It will help people realize the true intentions behind what people like myself and the people like Kim and Marshy and everyone that Icons has kind of been supporting, what we're really wanting. Because it's not that we want transgenders to never compete. It's not that. It's not like we're trying to exclude them. No one wants to exclude them, but we are prioritizing fairness. But I think, stating the obvious and having this language that can kind of resonate with everyone is definitely a good step in helping people get on the same page.
Let's take a quick little break and talk about food. Food's a huge part of the sports experience. I love it. That's why I have this dad bod now. But what if you could buy food you need for your watch party and donate to TPUSA without even leaving your home? You'd call me crazy. Call me crazy, but you can do that with Good Ranchers. They sell 100% American meat, and they believe so much in what we're doing right here, they will donate $50 to TPUSA on your behalf when you purchase from them. Good Ranchers delivers steakhouse quality beef. You know you gotta love that. Chicken, seafood, all the stuff you could ever want right to your door. And with our code TPUSA, that's TPUSA, they'll donate $50 to our mission while getting absolutely delicious food. Head on over to goodranchers.com/TPUSA today. Get ribeyes, New York strips, gourmet burgers, and so much more. Order now with promo code TPUSA, and $50 will be donated to our mission of sharing and preserving true American values. Once again, that's goodranchers.com/TPUSA. Get your box today. Promo code TPUSA, goodranchers.com/TPUSA. Do good while you eat good.
So when it comes to eligibility, do you think there should just be a straight, let's just have a DNA test? It's either your XX or your XY, and if you're in a certain category, that is the sport you compete in, and then if you feel like you're the other gender, here's this open division for you. Go for your life.
Yeah, I think that that's probably a good way to do it. It's hard because I'm not a scientist and I don't know exactly if there's certain, what's the word I'm looking for? If there's certain specifications in these DNA tests that say one woman might have a little bit of Y in her. I don't know how all that works.
Because even with that kind of stuff, those are just massive anomalies.
Right.
They're
right,
so
exactly.
obviously those are things that happen, but you're thinking about even the transgender community, that is such a small subsection of who we have in America, and then even a smaller subsection of that subsection is our athletes that are actually going to compete. So obviously you hear the Lia Thomas thing, and then we've had obviously there's rugby. We've seen stuff in the Connecticut high school track and field. So a lot of these things are just anomalies. But when it comes to these DNA testing, it's I guarantee you, if that's what they did, they are never going to have any sort of confusion whatsoever what those chromosomes are.
Right. No. I think that's a fair way to kind of do it. Females, males, and then an open category. I just feel like that's the best way to ensure fairness and opportunities. I don't know why anyone would really dispute that, other than if you were simply doing something to try and take advantage and win, which a lot of all transgender athletes claim that's not what they want and that's not why they fully transition. Then why are we complaining about an open category, So it's a bit furry, but I do think that's a good solution.
Because it seems like that's what FINA is doing right now. So for anybody watching or listening and haven't heard that at all, they said that that is the governing body for all of aquatic sports there. It's if you are a man, you are going to be in men's swimming or diving. If you're a woman, you're going to be in women's swimming or diving. That's it. So finally that came out just recently as we talk right now. And that's a bummer that has to come out, after a full season in the NCAA and a full championships that you had to go through. And, I think one of the biggest bummers too of the championships that people are going to forget about, thank God that you're provided a platform here and you're going to be bold enough to speak out about it. But there's plenty of women that were not a part of the final heat at those. They've worked so hard their entire lives. That could be their last swim meet of their entire lives, and they might have finished 9th. And the person that took their spot is a man.
There was a female from Virginia Tech. Her name is Reka.
Yep.
She's from Hungary. She actually stayed and did her 5th year at Virginia Tech and hopes to achieve some of these honors. And so she swam in the heats prior to Thomas in the morning of the 500 free to qualify for finals. And so I'm actually standing by her coach on the pool deck, and she had just finished her race. She's watching the last heat, which Thomas is in, and clearly destroying all the other females in that heat. And we're watching, and Thomas finishes, and that heat finishes, and Reka realizes she got 17th place. And tears just well in her eyes, and she actually looks at me and says, I can't believe I just got beat by someone who didn't even have to try. And that's kind of, because this was the first day of the meet, and so this was my shifting point for me where I was frustrated and angry at first, but once she said that and I saw how visibly upset she and her teammates and her coaches were, that's when I shifted from angry to just completely heartbroken. It was actually like this shift in emotion for me, and it was so weird. But I was honestly just even sad to be there. I was like, this is just, if we're racing against someone who visibly is not trying as hard as the other competitors, how is this, I mean, how can anyone's medal have value? How can anyone's trophy mean anything to anyone when it's just not, to me, it has no value that way.
And then sticking to actions here, I don't think it should be up to you or those coaches that are put into that terrible position at a swimming championships to make some sort of massive stance.
Right.
Because you think we shouldn't even be here in the first place.
Right.
The NCAA's put us in this position, and who knows what they're thinking. They potentially, I know Marcy Smith and a few other people here at Icons met with NCAA executives that are out here for their annual meeting.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like some of those NCAA executives and top dogs over there were thankful that this was happening.
Yeah.
But I'm sure some of them were thinking, oh, I hope one of these coaches or women swimmers say something.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't come from you. Like
Right.
that, it shouldn't, like, why is this the baseline that transgenders are allowed, just biological males are allowed in women's sports? It shouldn't be up to you guys to make some
Right.
massive stance to make a difference.
Right. This kind of issue, it seems like everyone is looking at someone else to say something first. It's what we dealt with all year going into this meet, because I first learned about Lia in November when she posted the fastest time in the nation, and I'm right up there with her, but I'm confused. I'm like, I've never heard of this person. Come to find out, my team realized she was a transgender athlete and swam 3 years as a male. And so...
Tell us about that, like, a little bit more, though, like when you came together with some of your teammates and you find out that this person, like, not only, wow, that's an impressive time,
Right.
but to find out that's actually a man that did that?
Well, the thing is, so going into midseason, I think I was ranked second or so in the nation. And so I had worked obviously we all work hard, but I'd worked so hard. I've gotten so consistent. I'd been doing amazing things in practice to where I really thought, like, I can win a national title. And so midseason is typically the time of the year when everyone posts the fastest times of that season. And so all these people are swimming their meets and stuff, and all of a sudden there's a swimmer from UPenn, which isn't a historically known fast swimming school.
Yeah.
This senior posts this really fast time, which is extremely kind of unheard of for this person to explode their senior year out of nowhere. And your fastest swimmers know each other.
Because most of you know
like
each
any
other
sport.
through all these
Like
all
any
these years.
sport. Exactly. So we're all kind of like, who is this person? And no articles clarified at that point, because I think they didn't know really either that Lia was formerly Will Thomas. And so I'm sitting down with my coach. I'm like, who is this person? Like, they're obviously a threat to, like, me winning a title, but I've never heard of them. And so a couple days later, there's this swimming account called Swim Swam. They had posted an article very discreetly indicating it was like this whole article about Thomas, and then in the middle they had Thomas was formerly Will Thomas, and then they kept going, but it was almost like you had to, like, read it again. You're like, wait, am I reading this right?
Excuse me? Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, there's no way that the NCAA will allow Thomas to compete in March. So I wasn't concerned for them being a threat to the 200 freestyle, because I truly, with my whole heart and soul, believe that there was no way they would be able to compete.
Do you feel like the NCAA kept this under the rug then? Because
that's the thing, is they didn't say anything that this whole time, up until about probably 2 months before national championships. They actually said, we're going to just follow whatever rules USA Swimming follows, which is, USA Swimming is kind of like the organization for swimming across all levels of the country. And so,
because I know we've covered that on old podcast too. I know we had Erica Brown and Gabby DeLoof on, and breaking some of those things down, that there's the NCAA, and then there's the USA Swimming, and then you're going to hear
and
FINA.
IOC.
Yeah. Where it's like they basically just, during this time, it's like, you guys just do whatever you want, and we'll figure it out later.
And that's exactly what it was. And so back and forth. She can compete. She can't compete. She can compete. About 2 or 3 weeks before the meet is when they finally made their decision. Thomas will be there. And so at this point, I'm still like, there's no way. Like, I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that we would be swimming against a male at a national meet where they're very, very likely to win a national title. It just was so absurd to me. But of course it happened, and here we are.
And I know we were talking earlier, that photo you have on the 5th place podium, I think that's something that's going to be remembered forever, alongside the other photo that we see when Lia got 1st place, and then you got a few of the other swimmers that are off to the side. I know they've come out and say, like, we weren't trying to exclude Lia, that was just we were friends. Like, whether people believe that or not, I think that's a moot point.
All of those girls went to the Olympics together because they're Olympians.
Yeah.
So you have one average at best male swimmer beating out 3 of the world's best swimmers, not even just this country. All 3 of those girls were Olympic medalists.
Yeah.
And so,
What do you think about Lia Thomas's exclusive interview with ABC? It was like an ESPN exclusive. Did you get to see that?
Yeah. Honestly, before I saw that, I have tried to be extremely understanding, although it's hard for me. I've tried to be relatively respectful. But after watching that and seeing her utter disregard for anyone other than herself, and the disrespect she had towards female athletes, at first, you kind of do blame the NCAA for the incident. But now I don't just think the NCAA is at fault. I think Thomas knew what she was getting herself into. I think that she audibly heard me being upset behind the awards podium once realizing that the NCAA was solely giving Thomas a trophy for photos. I mean, she was standing right beside me, and I'm cursing a little bit. I'm heated back there, and so she heard that and didn't offer anything. And so even out of respect, you would think, she could have said, here, you can hold this. I won last night. But I want to reiterate, I don't care about the trophy. I don't want people to think like I'm mad I didn't get to hold the trophy.
No.
That's not it. I have a ton of those, but it's just the principle behind it. And so after seeing that interview, and for Thomas to say that, she went from 400th place rankings in the males to a national champion and basing it solely on because she was happy. It just doesn't equate, and it's that right there should let people, understand the unfairness of it.
Wrist up. I was making sure there's nobody behind us. But going off of that, then I'm glad you said the happiness part, because everyone's waiting for Lia Thomas to have something to say, break the silence. And if your rationale behind this whole thing was your personal happiness, I think is easily one of the most selfish things I have ever heard in sports.
Exactly. All of this at the expense of women's athletics for one person's happiness and everyone supporting it. Not everyone, but you have a lot of people who are kind of validating this and her feelings. What about the females' mental health this has affected? What about the girls like Reka who stayed a whole nother year to become an All-American, to have that taken away by one spot by a transgender athlete? But at least she's happy. At least she's happy. So it just, I think these are the things and the personal experiences and, these stories like Reka's that people just don't get, and so it's crazy. And also for Thomas to come out and say she was planning on staying and, wanting to compete at the Olympics, where there are only 2 spots for females and to take one of those. And I'm sure, Thomas would, because she has these advantages. And so to do that, and to announce that, and to think that's okay, and to feel good about yourself doing that, that's when I kind of lost respect for Thomas as an individual. And it's not because she's trans. It's because of the disregard for other people. I would feel that way about a cisgender person. I just think that part was extremely disrespectful.
And I completely agree. Well, I think it was so selfish. I think it was disrespectful. And obviously Lia brought up that, I was abiding by the rules. And, technically that was true. I know that's something that I brought up as well. It's like, I hate that this is happening. You hate that this is happening. And there's multiple people across the world. There's millions of people across the world and in this country that are saying this is wrong.
Yeah.
But to come out and say that, I just felt good about it. I was happy. I'm abiding by the rules, and that's just the way it's going to be. And if you don't support me, you don't support trans people in general. So,
that
what do you
was another
say?
Thing.
Yeah.
That to me made absolutely no sense, because put it into a different perspective. This is a bit extreme, but say I support trans people, but I don't support them killing another person. Does that mean I just don't support trans people at all? Mm. I mean, that just goes against kind of someone's principles and morals. Is Thomas allowed to, kind of make that decision? I don't think that's fair. Mm-hmm. I don't think that at all is true. I very much I don't agree, nor would I ever actively pursue transitioning, but I can be respectful, and I can be, understanding, and I can at least be supportive in that way. Yeah. But no, I actually don't agree with or support someone cheating to win, or to put themselves at an advantage and solely base it on their happiness. I don't support that, and I don't think it's something that's all or nothing. A
few more questions. What would you say to people that are on the fence right now for this issue? They're like, well, maybe I just don't watch swimming that much. I don't really understand why this is such a big deal. If you had a chance, I know you're going to have a press conference tomorrow as we speak right now, and you're going to be speaking to millions of people and making it known that you're going to do whatever you can to protect women's sports. But if there's people that are listening right now, watching right now, and are going to be listening and watching you during that press conference, what do you want them to know to make sure they're on your side and on the side of women and fairness and equality in women's sports?
I want them to know that it's not just myself who's been affected by this negatively. There are so many people, and not just across swimming, all sports, who have to deal with this. To prioritize 0.5% of the population's happiness, it just doesn't make sense. And I hope anyone on the fence can solely look at the amount of effort put in. If you go back and watch those races, the amount of effort, you can visibly see it by Thomas in any of those races.
I don't watch a lot of swimming, and I was even telling, I know we got a few producers here, like, I don't even watch swimming that much. I watched the Olympics. I didn't swim in college, and it just seems like
it's
right now it's,
And so it's blatant. And so if you're on the fence, go back and watch these races and just look at when the females touch, how out of breath they are, how red their faces, how much effort they put in. You can see it compared to Thomas. That should tell you right there that the sacrifices we make and the time we put in and the commitment that it is, it's just not reciprocated from males when they're competing with females.
And obviously, once again, too, like, the NCAA needs to be held accountable. Obviously, FINA made the right decision here, but if you had the chance to sit down with Lia Thomas, the cameras are on, the mics are on, the world is listening, what would you say to Lia?
I think I would first want to know if it was worth it. If all of this, if competing with the females was something that actually did bring her happiness, because I can't imagine. I'm sure she's faced a lot of backlash as well, which I know is hard. It's a mental toll on anyone receiving, comments that are so negative, and I'm sure she's receiving, comments that are personal and hurtful, and I can't imagine. I know that's got to be hard, and so I'm just actually curious if she's happy and if it was worth it. And I would also want to know if she realized, like, the toll this has on all the other female athletes at the meet. If she knew the extreme discomfort we were in the locker room, if she saw those tears shed, she saw when she walked by people, it got quiet. Mm-hmm. It's just got to make you wonder, and I'm actually curious of those things.
Mm-hmm. What do you think that Lia would respond with?
I would imagine that she would stand pretty firm, and where she would say that she's happy and she's authentic and she's her true self, which I just don't know. I can't be the one to say she's not, but it does make you wonder.
Finally, what's next for you? Because I know we're talking off camera. Swimming's been your life for a long time, for sure. But you're in this transition period, and then now, thankfully, and it's probably pretty wild to think you are now a massive voice for women's sports.
Yeah. No, crazy. I definitely wasn't anticipating anything like this. I was actually planning on going to dental school. I want to be an endodontist. But
what is an endodontist?
They do like root canals.
Okay. I'll hit you up later in life.
Right. And so, but actually just got married, and
congratulations.
Thank you. Everything going on with this, I decided to take a gap year, pursue some different things, just see what opportunities lie for me. I'm still swimming some, yep. Training for different things, doing different things. I don't know. It's kind of just, I think I want to take a year and enjoy myself, work a little. I've never really had time off. Swimming has been such a time commitment. We normally train all summer, 5-6 hours every single day. And so to have my summer, I'm like, what is this? This is so weird. And so I'm kind of just enjoying that.
Mm-hmm. And then we don't know what the future holds. Obviously, it's a gap year now, so you're trying to figure that out. Yeah. And swimming's been a huge part of your life. Once again, it's probably nice to just take a little chill pill out here in Vegas, and then get to hang around some people that are doing whatever they can to help save and protect the quality and fairness in women's sports. But at the end of your life, we go to the future. How do you want to be remembered when it comes to this whole debate with transgender women's sports, protecting women's sports?
I definitely want to be thought of as someone who is respectable. I never want to be someone who is bashing someone or anything like that. And so I'm just hoping people will look back and realize that these things that I'm saying and so many other people are quietly saying, or people who are actively saying it, like Marcy and Kim, and people who might not have as strong personal experience as me, that it's common sense, and that we were right this whole time, and that hopefully we were onto something. Hopefully in the future this stuff isn't going on, and people can look back and think that, these people were kind of pioneers behind this. Which that's not my aim. I'm not trying to, get some sort of credit for anything, because I haven't done anything. I think it's kind of funny when people say you're so brave and courageous, because I don't think it's that brave nor courageous what I'm doing. I'm simply speaking, common sense that I want people to listen to. But I do hope people can look back and realize that maybe we're not crazy.
I hope so too, because it feels like we're living in some wild, crazy times.
No, I know.
It's really not as confusing as everybody makes it out to be, but I think your voice is not only so important right now, but it will be for years to come. I hope that you find out during this gap year exactly what you're supposed to be doing, especially being an activist for women's sports, but I think your voice is very important.
Thank you. That means a lot. That makes it worth it.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.